We begin with key developments in Ukraine as Kyiv's counter-offensive inches forward. A cargo ship has left the Black Sea port of Odessa despite Moscow's threats to target shipping after it withdrew from the Black Sea grain deal last month. Ukraine says the ship is moving through a temporary corridor created for civilian vessels. The Hong Kong flag ship had been trapped since Russia's invasion in February of last year. This as Ukraine accuses Russia of targeting food supplies following an overnight drone attack in the Odessa region. Moscow has been striking Ukrainian ports and grain silos since mid-July. Well, meanwhile, Kyiv claims its forces have recaptured a village in the Donetsk region after days of punishing battles. Well, CNN's Nick Robertson's been following all the developments for us from London and joins us now live. Nick, I want to begin with that cargo vessel leaving the Black Sea currently. How viable is this temporary corridor that's been set up as an alternative transport route for Ukrainian grain, given that we know Moscow have threatened to treat any ships leaving Ukraine as a target?
And we know that they boarded a Turkish ship that was inbound towards Ukraine earlier in the week. So it's not clear that really this is a voyage somewhat into the unknown. Of course, this was a ship that's been stuck, a Hong Kong registered ship that's been stuck in Ukraine since Russia invaded back in early 2022. And the Ukraine says it's giving the priority to getting all of those stuck ships out. It wasn't able to do that when the Black Sea grain deal was working, but Russia was a participant in as well. So Russia's threats, as far as Ukraine is concerned, are very real, and this will be a test. And we saw just today as well that the Russian drones targeted grain storage areas in a port along the Danube River. Again, implicit threat to Ukraine. You're not going to be able to move your grain out even along the Danube River, which is their sort of alternate backup plan, not being able to use the Black Sea. So this is a test. 30,000 tons of goods on board, some of them food products on board this Hong Kong registered ship. It's on its way to Turkey. It's expected to go through the Bosphorus in the coming days. But if there's Russian interference along the way, then that would very likely cause the Ukrainians perhaps to have to put a pause on this current plan.
And given the grinding nature of this counteroffensive so far, how significant are these claims from Ukraine that they have liberated this village in the Donetsk region?
It's right next to a village that they liberated about 2 weeks ago. And if you sort of read through the details of what's been happening in that village and this other village just to the east that they've now taken control of, the reality is the fight there has been pushed backwards and forwards. Ukrainians took the first village. The Russians were trying to get it back. They set their sights on the second village, the one they've now got. And we can expect to see the Russians try to push back. And along that big, long front line across sort of from Donetsk all the way across towards Zaporizhia, that southern front line, Ukraine continues to make small gains, but they are potentially reversible. And we heard from the commander of Ukraine's ground forces earlier today saying that he'd spent most of his day up in the front line in the northeast of the country around Kupiansk, where he said the Russians were putting a huge effort to try to get into that town, a town the Ukrainians retook from the Russians back in the end of last year. So it is significant that the Ukrainians ever so slowly are making gains. It's good for their morale, but we can expect the Russians to push back, and any further moves from there will take time. That's what we're seeing at the moment.
Nick Robertson, we appreciate your reporting on this. Thank you.